Hi, I'm Harry Miller. This is Technical Communication in the Fourth Dimension. I'm here at the Microsoft Conference Center where I was attending some presentations about what people are working on here. One of them was preparing for a media-centered future. I talked with one of those presenters.
I'm Travis Petershagen. I am the Digital Media Services Team Manager at Microsoft Studios.
Excellent. You just gave a presentation in there as part of our Engineering Excellence series, and what was that about?
It was really about designing your media content for the kind of new age of media deliverables. It used to be a time where we just delivered content to televisions or put them on a videotape and mailed them to someone. And now there's really no end of ways you can deliver content on the web. And that's kind of what the point of the presentation was about.
There was one slide in your presentation that I thought was would be helpful to people who are watching this podcast. And the slide was how defining the end user experience influences production. And could you talk a bit about what that is about?
Yeah, what we see is a lot of times people have a strategy for a piece of media and they get a budget and they jump right into creating the content. They get their camera and their audio and they go to town. And what we found is if you really think through the media experience and how you're going to deliver it to your audience, you can actually inform your production a lot better and think through different aspects of production that you wouldn't otherwise think about until it's too late.
So you're saying that people often will get the tools and think, okay, I'm set, here I go, and just jump in.
Here I go, and they'll create their content, and it might be a great piece of video, and then you realize that it's designed for a Zune or an iPod, and then the fonts are too small to read, or it's difficult to see the main points of the video. So we say to start from the end. How is it going to be delivered? How is your audience going to find it? And then start to think about how that impacts your production. So some examples are, can your audience be submersive? Can they really get into the content and dedicate time to it, or are they going to be prone to distraction based on where they're viewing it and how they're viewing it? And
how submersive is submersive? Are you talking like a 5.1 surround big screen TV environment?
No, I actually don't even mean technically submersive. I just mean not in an environment of distraction. For a lot of times when people watch something on YouTube, they're in between coffee breaks at work or some projects or meetings, and they're in a place where they might be interrupted, and I don't think YouTube would be a great place to deliver an hour-long presentation. But if you're delivering to someone who is going to maybe take it with them on a device for a commute, you might be able to get away with things like what audiobooks do. Or I gave an example of folks who preload iPods with surgical information for folks who are going in for an operation. And they can watch or listen to this content in an environment that's not going to get them all distracted and pulled away from it.
So that's something that they're doing in hospitals, is to give people an iPod loaded with?
Yeah. I manage a podcast meetup. We meet once a month, and there's a lot of interesting stories that come through that. You've joined me in that before, actually. And
yep, it's always very tasty.
Very tasty, yes. Yeah.
We meet at Pyramid Brewery.
We meet at Pyramid Brewery, so yeah. That helps a little bit too. But yeah, one of the innovative ideas someone has is basically doctors are spread very thin, and patients have a lot of concerns. So there's a group that puts content about pre-op and post-op care onto iPods, and after they have their consultations with the doctors, they're actually handed these devices to take home and listen to, and so that when they come back, they're a lot more prepared for what's going to happen and how to go on with the various stages of surgery.
That's very interesting. I hope insurance covers that. Those iPods aren't cheap.
Yeah, no, probably not. But probably in the grand scheme of those things, it ends up being pretty inexpensive.
Yeah. Okay. So there's considering the size, like where it's going to be seen, and whether people are going to be distracted while they're watching it.
Another area is considering the context. A lot of folks design their content assuming that they have controlled the environment where you're watching it. So say putting it on your website that's surrounded in all kinds of other contextual information. And the way the web is kind of laying out today with social media tools and RSS feeds and so forth, it's quite likely your content could end up in somebody's hands without having that contextual information around it. So does it do enough to stand alone and actually get your message across, perhaps your brand or your URLs or whatever it is you're trying to convey? Are those contained within segments of your media if they were pulled out of the rest of the experience? And that's an important thing to think about.
Okay, so let's see. Can you quickly summarize what the points that you've made so far, or that you've covered about how to think about production?
I'll do my best. I probably rambled a little bit, but really, when you're thinking about production, start at the very end. Don't jump straight into production after you've got a concept and your budget's been approved. Start to think about what the customer experience ought to be, what the deliverables need to be to support that customer experience, and how to deliver those deliverables to your end audience. And so I think if you put those three things in front of actually turning on your camera and going and getting content, you'll be a lot better served and a lot better informed to actually go act on that production plan.
That was a great summary, but I'm afraid I'm going to blow it with a nice question here.
Sure.
So how much testing do you do? Like, if you want to see what it looks like on a Zune, then you have to make an episode and watch it on a Zune, right? And then see what works. Yep. How much do you do of that?
We do an awful lot of it, actually. We have portable media devices, and we found that testing often leads to new formats and deliverables. So, for example, we delivered certain content in what we call a synced presentation format, where there's a talking head and alongside it are synced slides that correlate to what the presenter is talking about. Well, there's no way to get that onto a small screen like a Zune with any legibility. So we've added to that set of deliverables.
There goes another one.
And yet another one. Decided to do this interview at the bus terminal.
Yes.
So anyway,
this is actually the Microsoft Conference Center. Sorry, you can't see me up right here.
But really, in creating that, in putting those deliverables onto portable devices and seeing just how bad it looked, we decided this just isn't going to cut it for the audience, and so we actually create one now where we zoom in on the important points and we edit it differently so that the person with the Zune content is getting a slightly different experience than someone who's watching it on a desktop.
Very interesting. Well, thanks, Travis. I sure appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about that.
Thank you very much for having me.